Welcome back to Isimo. Do yourself a favor and check out our favorite sponsor, Legacy Teas and Spices. Tell them about it, Dominic.
Legacy Teas and Spices is my mom's business. She's been running it on her own for 5 years. With Ryan, not on her own. Okay. Legacy Teas and Spices. Great hand-blended loose leaf teas and spices. We have our own signature blend, Isimo Fresa. It's a strawberry vanilla. I also, if you are saying fuck the podcast, Dominic's my favorite. You can check out Domsy the Bombsy, which is a chocolate coconut black tea blend. It's fucking bomb. Tell them how it tastes.
It's chocolate. Liquid chocolate, foo. Shit is good. I thought I was going to hate it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And also use promo code ISIMO20 for 20% off the online store.
Also, I just want to mention with the barbecue season coming up, spring's coming up, summer's coming up, we do a lot of blended spices that are great for barbecuing.
ISIMO20 at checkout.
Also, I do photography and video freelance, and if you're in the market for a photographer, you can head over to Instagram and follow at KidBrother Inc. That's KidBrother INC. And check out my work and hit me up for rates.
Also, I do freelance design. If you want to check me out at the Ryan Reyes on Instagram, you can see my portfolio. I do commissions for specific artwork for like gifts, and I also do design work for logos. That's at the Ryan Reyes on Instagram.
Welcome back and shout out to our Jaritos. It's our $20 tier of our Patreon. You'll hear more about that later, but for now, let's give a shout out. For Nat Milo, Alejandro, Alex Knotts, Alex Nunez, Alex Ximil. Ximil. That's some Mayan ass shit right there. Oh my god, it's so aggressive. Amanda Pinedo, Angelica Mora, Aparni Ronnie, Chacaron, Christian Alvarado, David Serato, Eddie Bravo, Fantastic Fat Man, Gabby Ferris, dude. I've been messing her name up every week. I was like putting Faris and she's saying like it's a crazy.
It's Ferris.
It's Ferris. Isai Facio, Izzy Sandoval, Kareem, Cassandra Muro, Leisha Ashley, Daria, Mex Superman, otherwise known as Twex Mex or Mex Luthor,
Twex Luthor.
Twex Luthor, My Little Jabroni, Nia Town, Nicholas Moreno, Pedro, Rosa Alarcon, Serena, Susana Guzman, Yesenia Oropeza, and Zialtino. Thank you so much for being supporters of this Patreon podcast Patreon.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all the support.
Thank you.
To Isimo Podcast.
Semi-podcast.
My name is Gerardo Alarcon.
My name is Dominic Angel.
And I'm Ryan Reyes.
Otherwise known as Vince Scully.
It's time for Dodger Podcast.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like the video, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a rating and review. We've already hit like 450 on Spotify and 220, I believe, on Apple.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, dude. Crazy, right?
Thank you so much.
The growth of the podcast.
Yeah, it's been a year since the inception of this podcast.
It's been a year since we started this podcast.
It's been a while.
It's been a while since I've been talking into these fucking mics.
It's true. You just got back.
Oh, yeah. I just got back from Mexico.
We'll get to that.
But first of all, we had a major announcement. I am so excited for the future because we have a lot of amazing guests coming on.
Guest events. So many cool things are going to be happening.
Such a weird people that listen to the podcast and they want to come on, and we're excited to do that. And I don't think we're going to change the podcast much. But I'm excited to have people that we don't know, that we know of, that but we don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
If you know, you're gonna know.
You know the fucking vibes.
You know the fucking vibes, all right? It's going to be tight. I'm fucking so excited about it.
I'm stoked, and we have a major announcement today that we're starting a new tier on our Patreon for only episodes. So you don't get Discord access, you don't get a producer credit at the beginning of the episode, but you do get access to all of our Patreon episodes for $2 a month. The Vampires tier, dude. What do you think of the name?
Vampire.
For when, you got... If you guys want to play some vampires, head on over to Patreon.
But also, if you are a part of our $5 Yodolanda tier, we have some exciting things coming up on the Discord, led by Mr. Dominic Angel here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I want to participate more in the Discord and be part of this community that we're growing, and the Discord's already amazing. So we want to add in 2 new things. We're going to add in a Spanish club that we're going to figure out a meeting schedule when it's going to happen.
Spanish
And how to speak Spanish, first of all. But that's all part of the Spanish club. You come on, and I used to do this before the podcast where we would have a group of friends over and essentially go through a Spanish lesson. A lesson. I need an English lesson, huh? But we would different levels of fluency, and just practice basic things to complex ideas, being able to speak Spanish, and it's really fun. So we're going to add that to the Discord. Also, what we're going to do is for sure the last week of the month, we're going to do a hangout on the Discord, and it might be a movie night, it might be a game night. It's going to be something fun for all of us to kind of participate in.
Yeah, it might just be a chat or a couple of autistic mic drops. Okay, maybe not the mic drops, but Ryan looks like he's very upset.
We do have a section for those, though.
Some interesting facts that might not be true.
A lot more might be B related this month.
This B related, Jesus Christ!
Well, because it's Autism Month, and the B is the symbol for autism.
Oh, it is?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Find out more on the Discord.
What's a good buzz pun?
Buzz on to the...
Hear all the buzz on the Discord.
See what all the buzz is about.
Well, check out the link tree. I think I leave the Patreon link in the description of the video. Mm-hmm. But anyways, for today, we were tasked with reading a book for the last month.
The longest.
It wasn't that long. I have it right here, dude. It's right here. It's not that long. It's just that. Okay, wait. Let's see how many pages.
Look at how the print is too.
Oh, it's really small print actually.
Oh, okay. Don't look that.
325 pages, including the index. So
Jesus.
Who's it by? What is the book?
It felt like a saga.
The book is Stealing Home by Eric Nusbaum, and it's Los Angeles, the Dodgers, and the lives caught in between. Yeah, so if you don't know the story of Chavez Ravine, which became Dodger Stadium, that's what we're going to discuss today.
Right.
Do yourself a favor, though, if you want to. The audio book is, 8 hours long?
It's 8 hours, yeah.
It's a good 8 hours. Small print. It's a small print 8 hours.
It's a small print 8 hours. You're going to feel it, okay? But it is very informative.
It's a great book. We're making fun of it, but it's a great book.
Yeah.
It's just so long. Yeah. That's all.
It's 8 hours.
Yeah. And here's the thing about me is one of the side effects of having a brain with ADHD is I can process certain information faster.
Yeah.
So I listened to it at twice the speed, and it still took me like 2 days to finish that fucking book. It was so
long.
Slow.
We're not sponsored by the book or the author or the publication. This is something that Gerardo brought to our... We all know the history of Dodger Stadium, and this is just something that this was a good reference point for us to learn more about it.
And this episode's coming out on, March 30th, and the baseball season starts on March 31st. Yeah. So I felt like... I've been wanting to do this episode since, November. Right. Where I bought the book and I just never read it. I was reading Chicano, which we'll do an episode about that later.
Yeah.
We're going to start a book club, dude. I've been wanting to start a fucking book club.
We should. I think so. I mean, I have a stack of books that I haven't read, and this will give me a...
You have a stack of books. I have a fucking library, dude.
You have 16 books. I'm sitting right next to it.
It's a library.
Half of these are restaurant menus.
Fuck you. Anyways, so Stealing Home. If you don't know, before Dodger Stadium existed, what was there, Dominic?
There was a neighborhood, 3 neighborhoods,
a community.
Yeah. I look. I know this is going to be annoying. We're going to use the term Chavez Ravine because it is shorthand. It's what a lot of people know about. But I want to take a quick second to point out that the people that are from that area that became Dodger Stadium don't like using the term Chavez Ravine. They use the 3 individual neighborhoods, which was La Loma, Bishop, and Palo Verde.
Yes.
But we're going to use Chavez Ravine just to keep things simple.
Yeah. And mostly the book references Palo Verde.
Right.
Which was... They named it Palo Verde because when you enter the neighborhood, there's a tree that's with a green stem, right? Or something?
Right.
And in Spanish, we all learned this together. Just kidding. I know Spanish, fucking
Verde
assholes.
means green.
Yes.
I know Verde means green.
And Palo means stick.
Oh.
It's a green stick.
Yes. So, and it's not really that important. But it is part of the book. No,
That'd be a dope Western town. Welcome to Greenstick.
But basically what happened was it was around the 1950s where this saga happened. Keep in mind that immigrants were moving to these three neighborhoods because there was already a community base, and like they created this neighborhood.
Right. So starting from the end, working backwards, just like if you don't know what happened, there was a community that was where thousands of Mexican families were kicked out of their homes in order to, at the end of the day, give it to a private entity, to the Dodgers. That's where Dodger Stadium was built, and it came to a head in the late 50s. But it had been an ongoing struggle for years.
Yeah, it was meant to be a public
space
after the homes were given up.
Right.
And that's where it was found illegal by the city of Los Angeles for the Dodgers to buy the land. And then they fucking worked their way around that. And the communities themselves didn't even become Dodger Stadium. They became the parking lots.
That's the saddest part. So, yeah, jumping back a little bit further.
Yeah. We're Quentin Tarantinoing this shit.
Yeah, we're all over the place with it. We're not smart guys.
The book. It was so frustrating. That's why it was so slow. Is it tells like 4 different aspects of the same story, and they just bounce back and forth between. Every chapter bounces to one of the stories without telling you which.
Eric Nusbaum hates Ryan right now. He's hating all over his book.
It was very funny.
Book.
The thing is, the book it does a really good job of like laying out LA before this stuff was happening.
Yeah.
So a major thing that was happening in California and throughout the country, to be honest, is a thing called redlining. Yeah. Redlining is essentially a racist way of keeping people of color out of white neighborhoods. So like literally it was written into the titles of homes and land that if you bought this property and they wrote it so that if you were to sell it, you could only sell it to a white person.
Yeah.
It was like literally written in the title, this won't be sold to blacks, Jews, or Mexicans.
Yeah.
And so because of that, a lot of immigrants, many from Mexico, many already in Mexico that became fucking California, the United States, were moving to California for work and setting up residence in LA. And because of redlining, they were going towards this area of Chavez Ravine.
Yeah.
And they bought the land, they worked hard, they saved up money to buy the land, and many of these homes were built by hand by the people that lived there. So these are all, just imagine like you moved to an area and literally built your home from the ground up.
Yeah.
And then it's taken away from you.
Not only the home, but the schools, the infrastructure, everything, the roads, everything was built by the people that lived there.
Right.
Yeah, it 100%, was because the city wouldn't pitch in for that.
And the city wouldn't give them any ordinance or anything. They were just out of their business for the longest time.
Yeah, it was said that the road to Palo Verde was not paved.
Yeah.
They didn't have buses. They didn't have water or heat or electricity. Sometimes like they had to find out how to put all that stuff, how to get all those things for themselves.
On top of not only that, but finding a job outside of building your community.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which, shout out, dude, to all 3 of those neighborhoods and the hard workers that were spawned from that area, dude. I can't imagine. Can you imagine? Like, I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it, dude. Working. Whatever the work is, if we podcast for a living.
Right.
And then when we fucking turn off these lights, we have to go outside and pave a fucking road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And figure out how to cobble and all this shit that the book mentions. I can't imagine, making your own school to educate your kids, right?
Right.
I don't know. Shout out, first of all. I wanted to start with, before reading the book, for you guys. Mm-hmm. Are you or were you fans of the Dodgers?
I was a fan so much as I'm from LA. My dad likes the Dodgers. Even though he's not much of a baseball person, it's like, you're from LA, you're Mexican, you like the Dodgers.
Yeah.
That like,
I like how you went.
I go to the game. I've been to the games. I enjoy going to the Dodger Stadium and I enjoy going to the games, but I'm not like, I don't know that many like Fernando Valenzuela. Like I just learned about him this year. You know what I mean?
What about you, Ryan?
The same, mostly. I was super into him as a kid, but I can't remember anything from like stats or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm the fucking elephant in the room, dude, because, you know. Shut the fuck up. The most elephant-like laugh.
You said it, but not me.
You know, I'm a big Dodgers fan.
You're a Dodgers fan and you're really big?
Fuck you.
What did I say last time? I feel like anything you're a fan of, you're a big fan.
It's only because I have a big heart, asshole. What? What did you say?
No?
Oh, you pointed at something. So you
No, I
threw
was
me off.
knuckle bumping it.
Oh, okay. I thought you were ready to attack me right now. And then you got all silent. Oh, Jesus Christ. Nobody saw that.
So what?
But yeah, so I'm a big Dodgers fan because my dad, like you say, but like my dad is like bleeds blue. I guess that's what they say. You know?
Yeah, your dad is very into sports.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Rams, Dodgers. And like you were telling me about the Rams yesterday, right?
Yeah, the Rams started, they were an LA football team.
Why is it important? You know? I think more so in the past, sports have been important. Now it's like more of like a luxury. Like, I don't know if a luxury is the right word, but like it meant something for your city to be.
I think it's because we didn't have the internet. We had news, we had radio, and we didn't have access to people. Right now, if I go on my phone, I could talk to anybody in the world.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that. So it was a point of pride that you're like, hey, we live here. This is who we are. And so you kind of, any opportunity you get to test yourselves against other areas, it's like rival high schools, you know, it's like, we're better over here. We do things better.
Yeah.
And I do think that was part of the culture of just like having that passion for a community, which you can't bring any of this stuff without talking about all the racism in sports, but that's something that we'll talk about. But it is like sports was a very romanticized thing, and the author talks about in the book how when baseball came about, it started developing in America, that it needed to be better. The reason why things were so important in baseball was because it needed to be better than the country that it was in. Like it needed to be like a pillar of like purity and nobility kind of a thing.
Yeah. What do sports mean to you, Ryan?
I mean, I don't know. They're entertaining. There's aspects of them I do enjoy. I liked watching sports as a kid, but it's also sometimes in a similar way with what we talked about during the Patreon about people creating this idea with celebrities and holding them up to a pedestal.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it can be a little much.
Yeah.
You know, like the Super Bowl isn't an accurate depiction of the best team of that year. Like, you could win the Super Bowl and still have the worst regular season. You know? So small stuff like that. And that's not to diss anyone or disrespect anyone who's super into football teams in the Super Bowl. I enjoy the Super Bowl. It's entertaining to watch.
I like Dr.
I'm just
Dre.
not a sports guy.
Yeah.
I also think part of it is just like human feats.
Yeah.
Of like being able to throw 100 miles per hour, being able to like jump over a person, you know, like
spectacle.
The spectacle of it. It's, you know, it goes back to fucking gladiators in ancient Rome. That's always the comparison, but it's like just like feats of human resilience kind of a thing. I think that's like a very romantic idea. And then also I was listening to an interview of the author on a different podcast, and he talks about how for a lot of people, sports is an escape from everything else. Yeah. So it's a place that should exist without politics to a lot of people, because that's kind of how it's been painted along. It's about passion. It's about the team. It's about the community. It's not about The Rock.
Oh my God! Yeah, I like how you know what he's thinking.
It's more drive.
There's so many times on this podcast where I'm like, okay, why is Ryan laughing right now? And then you tell me.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to start with that, because we all know the gravity that the Dodgers have for the Mexican community here.
Right.
You know? And the book explores the rationality that occurred when Dodger Stadium was being built, right? How it made it okay for this city to turn their backs on these three neighborhoods. by focusing mainly on one family, right?
Arichegas.
Yeah, Arichegas. Say it correctly.
Arichega.
Yeah.
Said it backwards.
Yeah. Part of me wishes I would have read the book, you know,
Instead
because
of listening to it.
yeah, because you see like how it's spelled and you know what they're trying to say sometimes. And also you like I know the guy's name is Frank, the guy that was
Frank Wilkinson.
Frank Wilkinson that was running the public housing. Okay, so let's just get into it then. So you know,
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't know where you want to start it, but go ahead.
and most of it should be interpretation, but we need to set the ground floor, right? Like, what do we think of this, right?
Right.
And so what basically happened, and stop me if I'm wrong, because you know me, I fucking get shit wrong all the wrong all the time, dog.
From what I hear.
Fuck you. I tell you something in confidence.
I said it wrong, fool.
Why are you laughing so hard?
I
drank the water in Mexico. I was in Mexico for a week and I drank the water and I shit my brains out. I shit the bed, dude. Okay? Are you happy, Ryan?
Both figuratively.
Oh, it's no lie, dude. Don't drink the water in Mexico. I didn't even drink it. I just brushed my teeth with the tap water, dog. And you're not supposed to do that. Anyways, okay. So we got that on our system, dude?
You did.
Oh, you guys are jerks. This episode was about to be Anyway, so I shit it wrong. Okay, so to start, right? Basically, the book follows the stories of 3 or 4 different things happening, right?
Right.
Popular culture in baseball with Jackie Robinson, in New York.
Right.
Frank Wilkinson.
Right.
Is that his name?
Frank Wilkinson.
Okay. Frank Wilkinson and his journey from being, basically kind of raised politically as a communist.
No. So Frank Wilkinson was very religious. He was a Christian, and he actually believed in like helping people. Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of the.
He was raised like conservative Catholic, and then fell out of that when he was an adult, and became associated with the Communist Party later on, and that led to him being like fired from his job.
Yeah.
He became a communist because he found out there was bad things in the world.
Yeah.
So he lost his faith and became a communist.
Yeah, he found that there was faith in what's it called, privileged areas as opposed to third world countries, right?
Right. And he I think he took his example from, if I'm remembering how they described it correctly, from Germany, because this is in the 40s during the Third Reich's reign. So he's like, he sees all these people with like an equal, I don't know. It's a really weird story. Honestly, I was going to say the way the author makes it seem is like he hates Wilkinson until he like gets fired, like right up until he gets fired. And then he's the underdog. But the rest of the time he phrases the way this guy's white privilege benefits him in a very specific way where it's kind of like an audible eye roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that every section, like the 3 parts, baseball and Walter O'Malley, and Frank Wilkinson and the Arichigas.
Yeah, the Arichigas.
Each of them deserve their own book, but there's so much that goes on into it.
Yeah. So it follows these 4 different stories. O'Malley, you mentioned.
Yeah.
Walter O'Malley?
Walter O'Malley, he was the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yes.
In Ponte Villa,
I fucking screamed I shit the bed earlier. Jesus Christ. I can't stop thinking. It's like echoing in my brain. What's it called? So the main story
with the leg.
being the Arichigas, right?
Right.
The Arichigas lived in Palo Verde, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's where they set up.
And they unfortunately became the figureheads of the neighborhoods and the resistance to move from the 3 neighborhoods.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
There's this famous picture of a lady being taken out of her house.
Yeah, by like 2 or 3 police officers.
LAPD. Yeah.
Being carried out.
Yeah.
There's a whole newsreel of like the cops coming, them escorting people out of the house, escorting, literally dragging people away. They tried to take a baby away from their mom.
Yeah.
At one point, and like literally bulldozing the house at the end of it.
But to get there, you have to get to the promise of housing, right?
Right.
And Frank Wilkinson was heading up the housing project to make basically projects, right? Now when you hear projects, you think of the projects. You right?
Yeah.
But back then it was like he says in the book, it was looked at as a project. Like, we're gonna create something great out of this.
Yeah. Public housing was like so the thing with Frank Wilkinson, right? So he came to LA and he saw these neighborhoods. He wanted to start a public housing project in Los Angeles. He started working for what's it called, Home and something?
Yeah.
The housing board essentially in LA, and he wanted to start this idealistic like public housing project that would house 1,000 families and would be like a huge endeavor. This is how people should live, and we should provide free housing and stuff like that. And the way that we think about it now, a lot of people are like today argue like, yeah, housing should be free, right? And more people are on that side. But what's interesting is the way that Frank Wilkinson went about it is he believed in this project. He did not believe in helping the people of Palo Verde. And the thing, to jump back a little bit, is that everybody treated the people from these three neighborhoods as dumb Mexicans. Like, even though he believed in helping people, he was still racist. Mm-hmm. Like, he was the one that pushed the term slum onto Palo Verde.
Which I didn't know slum was an acronym.
What is it?
It's an acronym.
I didn't know that. I just thought it was like a dirty sounding word.
So continue. Sorry, I'll look up the acronym.
Yeah. So again, the people living in Palo Verde and Bishop and La Loma were living in crudely built homes. Some of them didn't have power or water. But they had built a community, their own communities that were functioning. And what people underestimated was the willpower that the people in these communities had, and how they fought for themselves. They were very organized. Like there was a big thing in the late 40s, early 50s, I believe, where the people in these neighborhoods fought for buses to go through Palo Verde because they were tired of having to walk miles, up and down hills and not having access and having to walk to work all the time. And so they organized this. And I think Abrana Arechiga was like another figurehead of that movement. So when Frank Wilkinson presents this idea, he's just like, I just want to build this, And so what's the best possible way to do this is to not displace any of the white neighborhoods and not go to the suburbs where there's like wealthy or working class white people. Let's go to this area where the poorest people are living. And on top of that, in order to get this done, we're going to paint these people as like decrepit, wretched people. Like there's a documentary called 10,000 More that I haven't seen, but it's like viewable online.
Yeah.
And it's this thing that Frank Wilkinson made, and it's very racist. He talks about how the children that live in the slums are, what's the word that he used? Like, essentially saying that they're hoodlums, like they're
thugs.
They're thugs. They get into trouble a lot more. So if we had public housing, we wouldn't have any of these troubled youth running around. We wouldn't have these slums anywhere. He kept pushing the term slum and made it an official word like that people used in order to condemn land so that he could get this property made.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an identical thing with the use of the word ghetto or even like later on what would become the projects. So it's the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way he put it was it him or the way it was sold to the people, because they had to get the people on their side, even the people of Palo Verde, Bishop, and La Loma, right?
Right. They had two tasks. They had to get the rest of the city to vote for the approval, and that's the way that they did it, was by painting these people like all the racist shit that they did. But the way that they sold it to the people in Palo Verde were that, hey, we're going to take your land. We're going to give you some money and we're going to give you resources to live up to 2 years so that you have a place to stay while we're building this project. And then you're going to come back and you could choose any of the units that you want.
You get priority.
Yeah, you get priority. And many people didn't like that idea. Many people were like, fuck that. I own a home. Like, I own this land.
Yeah.
I own this home. I built this home myself. You know, there was an interview with Melissa Arichico, who is part of the Buried Under the Blue organization, where she's a direct descendant of Abrana. And she says, like, why would I want to go to an apartment if I owned land?
Yeah.
You know? And that's backwards. That's not what you work towards. You don't work towards losing out on property.
Yeah.
And so, but that's how they sold it, and they just made it so difficult for them that they started buying out. That's the promise that they made to people, and they kind of like had already been in the works of like paying people off and taking their money, and it just like started to happen where these people stood together. But you know, when you start chipping away at things, it's harder and harder for people to
stick together.
Exactly.
So they were like, there was people that were in Chavez Ravine that would take the $9,000. Mm-hmm. They were offered $9,000. They would take it and find out the hard way that property outside of Chavez Ravine was upwards of $18,000 at the time.
Right.
And that was the main stance that the Arechigas took when standing against the development of anything there.
Right.
From taking away their land, they said that they were owed $17,000.
Yeah, because the land was appraised.
Yeah,
and their properties were appraised, and they were prorated. I don't know if that's a word, but they said that this is worth $17,000, and the judge was like, "Fuck that, we'll give you $10,000." Mm-hmm. And a lot of people got less than that. But again, it was because of the promise that you're going to be able to come back.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of like they went up to them, you know, a devil in disguise kind of a thing.
Yeah,
and there's theories. You can take it or leave. You think anybody could, it's all speculation. You can think what you want, but there's theories that this was a conspiracy, like that this is how the Dodgers got the land anyway. Some people believe that like this was a concerted effort to just like make it easier to kick these people out and bring the Dodgers in. I don't know if that's true or not.
But one thing I appreciate about the book is that it doesn't really delve in conspiracy at all. He says it at the beginning in the foreword,
right?
That it's just strictly facts of the story, you know?
Right.
Which was to become a public housing. And then if you watch interviews with Frank Wilkinson later in life, he talks about how his project was never finished because he was exposed as a communist.
Yeah.
Go for it, Ryan.
Yeah, so that was what I was alluding to. After college, he kind of starts, first of all, like learning about communism and associating with the idea, but he still considers himself like a non-practicing Catholic.
Yeah.
And then along those lines, he starts joining these like Christian groups that are pro, you know, benefiting the less fortunate. He ends up with this city job, and he ends up married with kids, and that's when he starts to associate himself with the communist movement. And that's when you get to the 50s, where I think it starts off first with Disney and one other guy, I forget his name, but he was like a movie producer. They create a list together that's the blacklist of all of the celebrities they know, writers and actors that are associated with the Communist Party, and so they start, you know, checking people, and eventually it leads back to Wilkinson. And he, I believe, was going to the city board originally to get approval for his project, and they immediately turned it into basically a witch hunt for him being a communist. And he just like, he doesn't deny it, he doesn't accept it. He's just like, whether I am or not, that's my private business, and you don't get to ask me that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they use it against him to kind of smut his name,
which is kind of like a constant theme of this whole story.
Yeah.
When they find one lead on something that could be controversial,
right,
and they just expose that.
Well, it's worth noting that at this time not only was Los Angeles much more racist than it is right now, it was much more conservative.
Yeah.
So a lot of these ideologies, public housing was touted as socialist ideology, and it just wasn't. It just wasn't the. Bless you.
Sorry about that.
You're okay. It wasn't the popular idea. Like Frank Wilkinson had to fight for these, and it's funny because it's like on one hand, some people would argue that like, oh, this guy wanted to build public housing, but he was also racist. It's
Yeah.
But the thing is like, yeah. So he, I'm gonna say allegedly because I this is my understanding of the book that he was actually a card carrying communist. Like he was part of the Communist Party, but he believed in the movement. So that when people started when the witch hunt began, he burned his card and he kind of hid his association, but it definitely was used against him as this project was happening because it was first used against him when it was being pitched, but it got approved, and that's the big thing is because there was a Hoover grant for the city to do something with public works, and so he was using that money. He had wanted to use that money to build this public housing project.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people speculate that even if his project got approved, there's no way that it would have stayed that way. It would have turned into either luxury homes or it would have turned into something else.
Yeah.
Because even though that they had money for a public works project, the city itself was too conservative to have interest in funding a public housing project.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that's fueled into that. One thing that I just happened to know from another source, like that wasn't in this book, was a lot of that was also driven by what part of the government monitors drugs and alcohol?
FDA.
The FDA. During this time, prohibition had ended, and so they were looking for something to continue. What?
It's the DEA.
Oh, the DEA monitors drugs and alcohol. Or is
whichever
it
one
ATF?
was monitoring.
Whichever you know the one.
Whichever one.
You know the fucking vice.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna slap one of you.
Please do me. Go for it.
Okay, never mind. That was creepy. I'm not gonna slap anyone. I promise. So one of these organizations was created to battle the prohibition, and when the prohibition ended, they needed something to maintain funding, otherwise they'd lose their jobs and all the money they were making.
Yeah.
So there's evidence to support the idea that allegedly they associated the rising controversy with immigration with the start of the war on drugs. By associating immigrants with marijuana, and they started low campaigns in major cities like New York and California, or Los Angeles, essentially creating the rumor that like all these Mexicans are bringing reefer and they're bringing drugs into our community, and they're ruining our communities. They also associated with this idea that is mentioned in the book about the zoot suits, about how like these guys would wear leisurely fabric at a time when they're supposed to be scarce. They're supposed to be conservating, essentially saying that they're like spitting in the face of what we're standing for in this war effort. Yeah,
right.
All of these collaborated to create this like xenophobic idea that Mexicans were bad for America.
Yeah.
And that all led into the situation that all leads into the environment that the Mexicans were coming into at the beginning of this book, essentially.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So now, if we can, pivot to something I really wanted to talk about.
Is it the gum?
Oh, you remember to talk about the...
I do want to talk about that.
I love the gum.
This is probably going to be a long episode.
I know, we were like, let's make this a short one.
Not as long as the fucking book, though.
There's so many interesting points, and like obviously we've done research outside of it, so there's like little tidbits.
Yes, so many people just turned off. Oh, it's gonna be a long dog. So the one thing I want. So let's pivot now to baseball. Okay. All right. I think we established pretty well the housing project, right?
Housing project. So
and also what it was like for Mexicans in Los Angeles at the time. They're described as fucking thugs, basically. I don't know what the word was. I know what you're talking about.
There was a word that deviancy. They would get into deviancy was a lot of it.
There's stories about stabbings and shootings at clubs in San Bernardino and how it affected people in Chavez Ravine and whatnot. But with baseball, dude, where the book really captured me, dude, and I think I told you about it right when it happened because I was a little ahead of you.
Right.
Was the story of how baseball started.
Right. You need to brush me up on this because
I'll brush you up all night. Anyways, that's so funny. I believe it was during the Mexican-American War,
Yes.
right? With General Santana from Mexico.
Right.
Santa Ana.
Well, so there's conjecturing rumors about the initial start, but I believe the inventor is American.
But one thing is for sure is that Santa Ana was a general, and he was in a war with an Illinois Army brigade, troop,
Right.
The 22nd or some shit like that, right?
Right.
And he was retreating because he was losing the battle,
Yeah.
and he lost his leg, right? Santana was known for not having a left leg.
Right.
And he lost his leg on the battlefield and retreated on his horse back to. He ended up in America, right?
He ended up in New York.
Okay, and that's where the gum came in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. We'll get to the gum, dude.
Oh, I know all about the gum.
But there's a myth, and the book clearly states that there's a myth of how baseball started. Was that Illinois Army brigade took Santa Ana's leg, made a ball out of leather, right, and played the first game of baseball.
Yeah.
With Santana's leg, dude.
Yeah, which even if it's a myth, it's something that I believe. There's no way a Mexican fucking started that story.
Yeah.
Like that's something more so than revealing racism. This is all speculation. I don't think it's somebody like trying to be like this is how racist those people were. I think that was a myth that was started by people being like we fucking dominated Santana and the Mexicans and like we used his body as a trophy as a plaything.
For his current history, that is the assumption because the guy that invented baseball, his hometown, hosts a leg that they claim belonged to the general, but according to the book and other stories that I've heard just growing up, that Mexico claims they deny it. They're like that never happened.
Yeah.
It's his leg is here, but it's buried or something.
Yeah, they have a leg on display somewhere in Illinois.
Yeah.
Now, I will say
that's the story of the first game played in Mexico. Supposedly he had already come up with the game.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
So they fashioned a ball out of a rock filled or surrounded with leather, and they played baseball with this fool's leg, dog.
Right.
I was right. It's kind of funny, but it's also like foreshadowing.
Technically, is that also how they came up with kickball?
Shut the fuck up.
But it's just like a history of like that war. Also, like that's the war that like the United States forced Mexico to give up the West Coast, so that they could fulfill Manifest Destiny. Yeah. So like it's an ongoing thing of just like Americans taking land.
Yeah.
That that where people already exist. But yeah, the whole Santa Ana thing, it also leads into that fool like started living in New York.
Yeah.
Which comes to our favorite part.
I want to just accent that the most interesting part of the book to me is that there was fucking baseball played with a Mexican's leg. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A prosthetic leg.
I kind of get it, the shape and everything.
Right.
I could see it.
And like the technology of the time was probably just like the finest wood for this fool's leg. He's a general of the Mexican army, you know?
Got a real kick it.
You're so proud of that fucking kickball joke. Anyways, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that was...
Well, the thing that I thought most interesting, I found
this heartbreaking, dude.
I found it heartbreaking, but also, here's the thing. Okay, so... Context, when I was a kid, we used to have things called like stars and cars testing.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like in elementary school, they would have like standardized testing. And so stars was like reading. It was standardized reading test. And you had to read an essay and answer a bunch of questions. one of the stories that I read like 3 times was about how bubblegum was invented. And the story that I was told through my fucking education was that a guy that worked for a tire factory was just messing around with rubber, and that saw somebody chewing it, and then he's like, "Oh, that's a good idea. Let me put some sugar on it."
Ding.
Yeah, and fucking created chewing gum and started the bubble gum craze in the United States. What the book revealed was this fool Santa Ana.
It's one-legged Mexican guy.
So a lot of us already know that like chicle it's chewing gum. Yes. Essentially, it's rubber that was chewed by natives, and was flavored, right? So Santa Ana has this chicle, and he goes up to this inventor and essentially pitches him the idea where he thinks that this could be used for better tires. So not only was this guy not working on tires, a Mexican went up to him and was like, "I think you should use this for tires." And that the guy was working on it, but then he just like learned about how like Mexicans chew on chicle.
Well, so from what I remember from the story, it was like he knew that people already chewed on it. He thought it could be used for something more, and his first idea was tires, but it didn't really work out. The rubber wouldn't work the same way as like regular rubber. So, but they were both trying to come up with an idea. He thought that it could be used for something else. And it passed, and then this is where the rumor that you would have heard from Stars comes in, is like he saw him chewing it the way it's supposed to, like the way he knows from Mexico, and then that's where it kind of like, by the time he has the same idea, but he waits till the guy leaves.
It's Taco Bell all over again.
Yeah.
What happened with Taco Bell?
The white guy that used to work at a Mexican restaurant, and he wanted to start his own business. So then he asked the guy running it, like, "Can you teach me how to make this?" So the guy teaches him how to make it, and then he turns it into Taco Bell and becomes this conglomerate. And then this guy's kind of left in the dust.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened with bubblegum. Was this fool like he saw him chewing on it, waited for him to leave, decided to work on it and pitch it.
Make a bunch of flavors.
Yeah. And you know what? This fool started with black licorice.
It was a different time, dog.
Disgusting.
Well, this is during the 40s and 50s. Just not a lot of people haven't learned how to master artificial flavor by this time. So it kind of makes sense. Molasses was a flavor.
Look, I guess I understand if that's all you got, black licorice.
Yeah. And also, you know, in today's context, chewing gum is not like a craze. You know what I mean?
But at the time,
dude, think about it. Like the first baseball field in Los Angeles was Wrigley Field.
Right.
That was like an actual like professional stadium, right? Or not stadium, but baseball field.
It was a baseball park.
Yes.
In LA. So Wrigley owned 2 teams.
Yes.
The Hollywood Star. Oh no, the Los Angeles Angels and
the Chicago Cubs.
Yes. So that's why Chicago has Wrigley Field. But we also had, but LA also had a Wrigley Field that was it Emmett Park or something like that?
Yeah, I forget.
Also known as
there's a whole other aspect about Santana that I forgot between him losing his leg and the bubblegum.
Yeah.
This leads to him going to America in the first place. And this is why they mention him at all. He has 2 links to American baseball. One of them was he was trying to beat Americans at baseball by bringing it to Mexico.
Was that Santana?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right. I could be wrong. But continue. Because
whoever created the gum was the one that also did it.
Okay. But because later in the book, there's a different character in Mexico that is taking American players.
I do believe. Yeah,
so
I think we're talking about the same person, but I can't remember their name. It was like, it's not Pancho Villa, but it was like something like with a P and a V.
Okay, getting nasty.
Gross. You're gross.
So continue, right?
But yeah, so it started with him trying to bring baseball to Mexico, and so what he was doing was matching and Basically, the original baseball teams had it in their contract that once you're with a team, that's who you're with forever. You can't
you could be
switch
over there 120 years.
So the loophole was they would quit the league completely and come play in the Mexican league.
Yeah.
And that's how he was trying to build baseball, because he saw what baseball was doing for America and he thought he could use it to his advantage in Mexico, creating a national pastime. And it kind of started to work at first, but then they figured it out. All that stuff happened. The war happened. And he ends up without a leg, like fleeing Mexico to America. And so that's when he like the whole Chicle thing happened.
Yeah.
There's also this is just a small interesting tidbit about how colonialism has worked throughout the country. And if you look at the countries that are like bigger baseball fans, like, because there's some South American countries that they don't give a shit about football, soccer. They care about baseball. Yeah. Like and it has to do with like
the Dominican Republic, the Puerto Rico.
Exactly. It has to do with the imperialism of England and the United States directly. Yeah. Just an interesting thing.
Yeah. I mean, this fucking dude, I'm back from Mexico, dude. And colonizers are real, dog. Yeah.
But also the gum becomes important because it leads to big league chew.
Yeah.
Which like makes associates gum with baseball, creates this whole industry that this guy could have been a part of, but he left too early.
And you know, this is just us retelling the story, really, but it's all found in this book. And I think awareness is the number one reason why we're doing this episode.
Yeah.
You know, people have asked us in the past, especially on the other podcasts of mine too, to discuss Chavez Ravine.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to state that my feelings towards it are like polar opposite of what they were before. I did not know this story, you know?
Yeah, I've always had like I've known of the history. Yeah. I didn't know the details. I didn't know that it was meant for a public works project, and people were like kind of,
it was like bait and switch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they didn't even want to take the bait to begin with, you know?
Exactly. They took it very reluctantly because they were promised something, and
which gives credence to the whole conspiracy thing that you're talking about, where it was just meant to be Dodger Stadium all along.
Right.
Yeah, because it was like a weird loophole where they used that guy being fired as a way of destroying the project completely.
That it was associated with communism.
Because his project was the one that made the promises. So if that project doesn't exist, the promises are no longer valid. And that leads to the Dodgers trying to claim it, and that leads to the lawsuit.
So I think it's a good point to kind of bring up. There's an organization that if anybody's interested in like learning more or how to support, there's an organization called Buried Under the Blue that is ran by many people that were direct descendants of the families that were displaced. And you can go to their website to learn more how to support or just get information. But just briefly, like some of the things that they're asking for, because it's Dodgers and LA are very complicated, because I kind of want to talk about Fernando Valenzuela a little bit. But before that, like, just to point out some of the things that they think are like the county, the city of LA and the Dodgers have tried, not necessarily tried to brush this under the rug, but they've chosen to ignore it for so long. And it's kind of like a festering wound that is just like, they're just not coming out like directly acknowledging it. And a lot of what people want is just acknowledgement for them to say like, yo, this happened, we apologize. Other things that they want are reparations in some form for the descendants of the families. Because if you think about it, like a lot of wealth in this country is built on is land ownership. And if you think about 1,000 families that were displaced, that was an opportunity for Latinos to grow as a community,
to create generational wealth.
Yeah, to create generational wealth and have better opportunities. And that was kind of ripped from them.
And not being able to acknowledge it like makes you question whether or not it still is happening now, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think it is. I mean, eminent domain. As recently as like I could remember, the biggest thing I could remember is recently in Baldwin Park when I was in high school, there was an eminent domain scare. I think around 2008-ish, give or take a year or two, where the mayor was trying to take people's homes so he could build a big ass shopping center. Like there was going to be a movie theater and like all kinds of shopping, and there was like the eminent domain, anti-eminent domain posters in people's windows of like a hand reaching over a house. This shit still happens. I don't know if it has been happening up until recently. I don't know if it's still happening. I would speculate that it probably is, because they're using very kind of gross tactics to any opportunity that they can say they need to find a way to condemn land, and to say that it'll be more valuable as something else than what it already is. And generally it's housing poor brown people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to point out like that website and that organization. There's a lot more that places that we can know, but that's the biggest one that I know. And that's kind of the one that I want to point out because Melissa Arechiga sits on the board of that one, and she's a direct descendant of Obrana.
So since you're mentioning that, let's revisit the displacement of things, right?
Right.
So the Arechigas found themselves all over the news papers of being kind of the figureheads of the Latinos that are against the eminent domain of Chavez Ravine. And they were the holdouts, you know?
Right.
So all they were asking for was $17,000.
Right.
And they claim, obviously, you don't know. We weren't there. They claim that if it would have just been $17,000, we would have got up and left, right?
Right. So that was the thing, is that they very publicly, I mean, there was a letter that was written that said, like, we're not against the Dodgers. We're not against these projects. We just think that it would be fair. Pay us, buy the land from us for a fair rate. One thing that was interesting, I don't know if this is where you were going, but like, it's important to kind of point out that the general consensus of like the city,
that's exactly where I was going,
was they were against the eminent domain. They were on the side of this family, right?
Yes.
And it was because they saw them as being poor and working hard to buy this property and to own it. There was I forget his name, but there was a city councilman who was a libertarian and was like a staunch supporter of the family in their legal battle. And like, it's interesting to think about where like the biggest support for the Arechigas were conservatives, because they were like, no, the government can't just come and take your land away. Like, that's not right. But what was crazy to me was that, so it turned out that the Arechigas owned multiple properties.
Yeah. So that, just like Frank Wilkinson's communist political stance,
right?
They used that against him to end this funding, or for the end of the project,
right?
And the Arechigas having, I think, 11 homes or pieces of land. I don't remember. I know that they had 6 kids. Yeah. And each of the kids had a property, and the parents had like two or three more properties than what they owned. Yeah. So that the fact that they owned multiple properties was used against them. Like, people actually turned on them and said that they were just like, they were using the kids because they had grandkids. They were using kids as weapons to get people on their side. They were, because the thing is like, also, they bulldozed their home. Yeah. Right. Not only that, but they used homes from the 3 neighborhoods to create movie sets.
That's right.
They would just basically put it on a fucking trailer and move it out to Universal or some soundstage, you know?
Yeah. That's crazy. I forgot about that part. But one of the things I was like, the family in protest camped out on the land after it was bulldozed. Yeah. So people were just like, oh, they're just like, they're liars, they're cheaters, they're wasting taxpayers' money. Yeah. Stuff like that. And what was interesting was the letter that was written by Manuel Arechiga, was that he was like, I'm a taxpayer. Yeah. Like, I bought this land. I worked for this land. I'm a taxpayer. Is what I'm doing illegal? Is what I'm doing wrong? How come we're not being treated fairly? Yeah. All we want is fairness. All we want is for us to receive a fair compensation for a property that we worked hard for.
Yeah. We appraised it. Like,
Yeah.
this is what the fucking steps you go through. You
Yeah.
know?
And the other thing is, them being the face of it, they use that to discredit the movement as a whole. Because there's other people that weren't in that situation that just fucking lived there that now have nowhere to go
Yeah.
because of, and this isn't to say that they did anything wrong. They didn't. That was the other thing. I was going to mention that the two biggest things about this were, one, they were fighting for something they worked for. Because the way he describes their story, they didn't start off, with all these properties. They were immigrants who built something, in America, and then had it threatened for no reason. They were lied to by the government, and they weren't the only ones fighting for it. They were just like the ones with the most notoriety.
Yeah, they were the most vocal, so they got the worst end they got the worst treatment. And the thing that sucks is like, it's all because it doesn't
Used the
fall.
wrong word.
It doesn't fit into a narrative it doesn't fit into the narrative of like these poor Mexicans, these poor uneducated, helpless immigrants.
Why aren't they happy with what they have?
Exactly. And it's just like this, if we think about it, like you brought up in conversation the 710 freeway and about how it splits. It ends because the white neighborhoods didn't want it going through. They didn't want to deal with the pollution, so they protested and they pushed. They not in my backyard shit, and they pushed for freeways to go through poor black and brown neighborhoods. And it's the same thing. It's like we can't garner respect unless we fit into this narrative of being helpless.
Yeah.
And we should be thankful for whatever help we get.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be respected as humans.
It's infuriating, dude. I can't imagine. Like, the Dodgers had the option of paying out the families.
They still do.
They still have.
They still do, which is crazy. And it's the whole thing of like leading into Valenzuela was that like Mexicans did not like the Dodgers after the eminent domain. They did not go to baseball games,
and they were dying for a Mexican pitcher.
Right.
They mentioned that they were giving scouts they gave the direction of finding a good Mexican pitcher.
Right.
As soon as they got the stadium up, because
it's a thing too. It's just like it's like a Band-Aid to an issue.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from Valenzuela and his accomplishments and what he did for Mexicans and Mexican Americans, but it is very much a Band-Aid to a gross issue that happened. Yeah. So, so one of the things.
Yeah, the 710 freeway thing is. I just got really mad right now about it. It's just like, they get what they want, and they used the Spanish colonial houses as public landmarks.
Right.
You can't be destroying these houses because they are landmarks of our country, and a quote unquote slum created by Mexican immigrants that have it hard to begin with is viewed as my land. It's fuck you guys. This is ours.
Yeah, there was something that in one of the interviews that I was listening to that they said something interesting was this is another case of wealthy people deciding how poor people should live.
Yeah.
And we see that throughout history, even until today.
It pisses me off.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Straight up.
To be honest, fool.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, fool.
I'm pretty mad.
Yeah. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, I've said this thing before about, that's the thing people kind of misunderstand about the difference between a prejudice and what racism is racism can have prejudice, but the main difference is prejudice requires focus. It requires direct hatred and intention, where racism doesn't always need that. It's not just hatred, it's dismissal. It's a complete disregard for another person's life. They don't matter as a being to you.
Yeah.
It's focus and it's complete like disregard.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk a little bit of like, what does this mean for fans today? What does this mean for Latinos, for baseball fans, for Dodger fans, like for us? Like, what is? Because
honestly, it goes back to just having some sort of leader, man. There's no leader of the Mexican American community.
Yeah,
name one that doesn't make a joke, dog. You know what I mean?
George Lopez. I mean, it's a difficult thing because I feel the what's interesting is I feel again like when we see representation throughout history, we've had conversations about. I'm hesitant to say, but I want to give context for it. Is we talked about how we felt when Melissa Villaseñor joined SNL, and it's not to take anything away from her. I think she's hilarious. She's one of my favorite comedians. Very funny, but it was kind of weird just the way that it happened. It just felt like, here, we'll give you one so that you'll stop, so that you'll stop talking, kind of a thing. And that's like the whole thing with Valenzuela was this. It just feels like, hey, we for one, Mexicans, it's been shown time and time again. People say like, oh, they're not interested in this, or they don't care, they don't want these things. But it's shown time and time again, when we get representation, we support it hardcore, like like any other demographic would, right? So when Valenzuela started pitching and started winning and became this icon for the Latino community, particularly Mexicans, that was something for them to latch onto. It made people feel okay to be Mexican in the United States, which is a very powerful thing. I can't take that away from Valenzuela, or his performance record. But it's also worth pointing out, well, before that, I just wanted to say, like, it went so far as that Ronald Reagan wanted to meet him. And so through meeting him, it was kind of like one of those things like, oh, if you just meet us, if you just get to know us, because like apparently after Reagan met with Valenzuela, he gave citizenship to like 1,000 residents, which is crazy for Ronald Reagan, right?
Yeah.
But it's worth pointing out that like the Dodgers as a franchise, like they used him, same thing as like Richard Montañez. I feel like they used him to build a relationship,
to widen their market,
to build a relationship, and then they hung him out to dry. They gave him a shitty contract, and they kind of like, he did not end on good terms with, even though he's participated throughout the years. I don't know if he still does broadcasting.
I have a story about that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know if he still does like broadcasting and stuff, but they didn't at one point in time, like they kind of gave him the shit end of the stick.
Yeah.
And he had to pick up the pieces, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And they still use him. They still use him as a draw for the stadium. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Last year I went to Fernando Valenzuela night at the Dodgers to the Dodgers game.
Right.
And fucking, I'm starting to hate Edward James Olmos more and more, dude. I told you about this when it happened.
What?
Where Edward James Olmos came out and did the ceremony of introducing Fernando Valenzuela, and in doing that, though, he said, the creation of this stadium hurt a lot of Mexicans, but then they got Fernando Valenzuela and they made it all right.
Yeah, it's a shitty thing.
And then me and my girlfriend looked at each other. We're like, what the fuck? And in that same game, there was a protest,
right,
where they had 3 streakers. They're not streaking, but they had 3 people running on the stage with La Loma, Bishop, and Palo Verde on their shirts.
Right. And there was another banner that said "Not Chavez."
Yes,
that was flown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so crazy you were at that event, because people talk about it all the time. But yeah, it's like it's a complex issue, because I understand people love sports, they love the Dodgers. I think it's willing to look at something you love and understand its flaws and call certain things into question. Yeah.
I think it's important too, though, as opposed to like, how do we feel about the Dodgers now? Because it's kind of irrelevant. It exists. It's obviously predominantly Latino based fans.
Right.
And I wouldn't take that away from them. I'm not saying boycott the Dodgers.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that either.
Yeah.
I definitely don't.
But
think
what's
that
important to me is who gets the blame for the fucking injustice that was done before. Because I don't really necessarily think it was the Dodgers. You know, the city of Los Angeles fucked those communities by allowing everything to happen in a way.
I mean, there's an argument to be made that Walter O'Malley just capitalized on an opportunity that was presented to him. He was going to do what a shark was going to do, you know?
If it wasn't him, it would be somebody else.
Right. So there is that argument. You know, you can also call into question people should have people should be more conscientious. You know, it would be awesome if these fucking mega wealthy people would consider, you know, the poorest of among us.
Yeah.
But I do agree that like the Dodgers, because like in the book they detail, or the author details a lot of city officials, council members, the mayor, like all kinds of people that are really trying to get baseball, a Major League Baseball, to come to Los Angeles. Yeah. So it is kind of crazy that like if you consider it at the time, they're so starved for a sports team that they're willing to just throw people away. Yeah. You know, and at the time it was okay because they were Mexicans. Now it's okay when things happen, you know, the Olympics, like the LA, I don't know if it's happening in LA, or I remember at a time it was like pitched that it would happen in LA. But like they whenever there's the Oscars just happened, they fucking push out the homeless people so that
for the night
so that the Oscars can take place, you know. That stuff happens all the time. There's
no problem here.
Yeah, it's the most vulnerable people that get tossed aside, so that the least vulnerable people could have a good time.
Yeah, and not be vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Ryan, what do you think?
About what part?
Who is to blame in a way? It doesn't have to be right. I'm just asking. What do you think?
I mean, it was, you know, the community of that time, not the community, but the community surrounding the community, not Mexican specifically, but everyone else, like, it's very clearly a push thing, even if it's of its time. I don't think it should have any way on the current standing as far as fandom, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that it happened, to hold resonance to it. You know, I don't know. I wasn't one of the families that's asking for reparations. I don't know how to speak on that. That's not, you know.
Yeah, that's why I say
mine to speak on. But at the same time, like, we can't pretend it didn't happen. Yeah. And, you know, it's one of those topics where you bring it up and sometimes people are iffy about it. Like, I don't want to hear. It's important to hear about it.
Yeah, I'm sure people will do that to us. Yeah. Right? People love the fucking Dodgers, dude. There's no getting around that. Yeah. And I love the Dodgers, dude. Yeah. I don't mind talking about it. Yeah,
like, to use an awkward example, you know, I don't watch Woody Allen stuff anymore. I don't. I just don't. It's my choice. You don't have to.
He's like, but I love Midnight in Paris. Just kidding.
You know, out of respect for what happened and the things that he did, allegedly or otherwise, like, I don't. Yeah. He's not a good person. He did bad things.
Louis C.K., same thing.
That does not mean that, you know, Annie Hall is still a great movie. I'm just not going to watch it anymore. But it's like, I still like Annie Hall. I can't deny that I didn't like that movie. I can't deny that I didn't like the other movies he made. You know, yeah, with Louis C.K., I can't deny I didn't like the show. It doesn't mean he did a good thing. It doesn't mean that he should be forgiven or that it should be, it's all rectified now because it's old. That's not what that means. It just means that, you know, it's, you can keep them separate, but that doesn't, separate still not, they're separate, but they're still acknowledged. Because I think that's the difference. Because when people say separate, I think sometimes they mean they just don't want to think about it. But it's like, no, you can acknowledge both. And personally, I feel it's important to acknowledge both. Because if you ignore it, you allow it to happen again.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn, Ryan's dropping bars.
Bars. Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a good point. I think it is important to understand it because this will happen again. It might not be Mexicans, but it'll be somebody else. It'll be a poor community. It'll be unhoused people. It'll be whoever it is. It's never going to be the wealthiest people. It's going to be the poorest people. So it is important to understand that. I think in terms of this specific event or this specific thing, like, again, like, I'm not a family of the descendants. I don't know how that can be rectified. And the author actually said, like, you know, this is kind of an open wound. There's kind of no way to heal this wound, but a big part of it is acknowledgement. And I think, you know, maybe the city, I speculate the city and the franchise don't want to publicly apologize, because if they do, then there's has to be something extra with that. Then they're like, okay, well, here's $1 million for each of the fucking descendants or something like that, where they don't want to commit to that, and they don't want, because it might not be enough, you know, because there's no way to really truly pay these people back. They've ruined lives, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's difficult.
And to be honest, the one thing I could think about when it comes to silver linings is that the tickets are fucking cheap, dude. And honestly, like that, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I know it's probably funny, but I'm a hilarious guy.
Yeah.
But dude, the tickets are cheap, and that's like a. Okay, Ryan. That's the most disrespectful yawn.
Well, so don't switch to me.
He's like, don't be boring then.
He switches to me every time.
Sorry. But the ticket prices, you know, O'Malley set out to make cheap ticket prices and parking for all.
Right.
And the tickets themselves are cheap. It's a family event, family friendly. They've worked hard over the last years to make it a family friendly atmosphere. And, you know, that's as fucking gray as it is, that's my silver lining. You know what I mean?
I mean, that is definitely a benefit. That is definitely a positive to come out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, the city has grown so much. I mean, to think about it, it's just like, I don't know baseball, so you could probably call me an idiot, but I'm like, how many teams have their own stadium? It's always Petco Park, Wrigley Field. I thought Wrigley Field was like an actual field. It took me until I was 24 to realize that it was the bubble gum. Mm-hmm. But it's like literally like
Yankee Stadium, Dodger Stadium.
Oh, there you go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like very few teams have that. Very few cities have that. And it is a point of pride for a lot of people, especially, you know, there's a thing that I've heard, I don't know, but the Dodgers were kind of the pioneers of Latinos in baseball. Yeah. And they created their system was to recruit Latinos, people from Latin America, and also train local people from LA, from California, that a lot of other teams don't do. They buy their athletes from other areas, and that's my understanding of the Dodgers. I don't know. Again, you know,
I mean, I probably wouldn't be able to correct you. So but yeah, owning the stadium as the Dodgers, that's cool. I mean, you know, but it would be cool if the people that live there had ownership also, you know?
That's cool. Maybe give them a stake in the company. Give them a fucking half.
Hey, believe in yourself, Dodgers. If it's gonna grow, you know,
half a percent stake. To people that are descendants. That makes sense to me too.
This has been a lengthier episode, and are you guys good with that, or you guys want to go further?
I think I'm good. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts, right? Oh, what should they comment at the end?
What's your favorite flavor of bubblegum?
If you say black licorice, blocked.
And I'll leave it in the description, but it's buried blue.
I think it's buried under the blue.
Buried under the blue. Mm-hmm. We'll probably support those, even though I don't believe in charities. I'm just kidding. They'll probably support those descendants of, you know, this fucking bullshit that happened.
Yeah. Not to... Well, did you have something?
No.
I have one more thing. It reminded me when you said blue. No, I don't want to make it about me and like separate from the topic at hand. It's the beginning of April. By the time this comes out, right?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to comment and just remind people, because a lot of people were asking me to dye my hair blue for Autism Month, which is April. I chose specifically not to because Blue, as in relation to autism, specifically references Autism Speaks. And I just want to mention this small thing where Autism Speaks is not a respectable organization in terms of supporting the autistic community. They're a community that's very conservative. They're a community that believes that autism is a disease to be cured and that people like me shouldn't exist. And I know, that there's celebrities that support them and stuff. Those are people that don't do the research. They believe in a lot of wrong things. And I want to specifically say, like, if you truly support the autistic community, if you know someone who's autistic, then a lot of us are saying, like, don't support Autism Speaks.
Okay.
Damn, autism is buried under the blue too, huh? That was pretty good.
They tried to make the blue ribbon our symbol, and autistic people were like, not again. Originally, they tried to do the puzzle piece thing. It's a whole other thing we don't have to get into today.
I mean, we could do it a whole other episode if you want.
I forgot to put it on the board. That's why I wanted to mention it now.
Speaking of the board, if you want to be introduced to the board, join us on Patreon. And we have a new tier for vampires for $2 a month, where you only get episodes. You don't really get much else other than the episodes. But if you're interested in finding out more about us, we have very exciting episodes there about death, how we feel about sobriety, how we feel about God, and we fucking bullshit about our week mostly.
Yeah. It's a lot looser. It's a lot more personal. And I I know he started with death, but
well, that's one of the best episodes.
That's what I was gonna say. Verde-Isimo is probably my favorite Patreon episode.
It was recorded right after Ryan told us that Norm Macdonald had passed away.
Oh yeah, we had like a whole other itinerary planned, and then like as we're starting, I get a little ping.
2 seconds,
and he goes, "Oh no, no." And then I'm like, "What, Ryan?" He's like, I can't
do it because then
it's gonna fuck
and then we were like, Ryan, what?
Ryan, what?
And he goes, "No, big dog, I just died." And
then I'm like, "Why would you tell me?"
But it was a really touching, like, good. I'm really proud of that episode, and there's a lot of stuff that we have available, and we're going to have a lot more fun things coming on. Gerardo has Gojardo Al Capone, his solo podcast that is accessible through the Patreon. I'm going to start one yet to be named. Ryan has his Autistic Mic Drops that's going to be dropping pretty soon. So it's a lot of fun stuff on the Patreon. And now we have an accessible tier of $2 a month. And, we hope you check it out.
And if you don't know, audio only listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that, you can't see what I'm doing right now. But it comes in audio only too. I never knew that when I first heard of Patreon. So,
oh really?
Yeah.
Sick.
But I'm also an idiot. So, anyways, I love this episode, dude. I mean, the story's crazy. I fucking the one thing we didn't touch on, and I always end up bringing up every episode, is my frustration with the fucking shit. God, they don't tell these stories, dude. This is a fucking crazy ass story. It has a good fucking name, dude. Stealing Home, it could be a fucking Oscar-winning movie, There's so many Oscar-winning Mexican directors in this goddamn city.
Yeah.
And they don't make movies about these fucking stories, dude. And I don't know. It has all the aspects of a good fucking movie. Communism, you know what I mean?
Right.
The 50s? People love making movies about the fucking 50s, right? The Dodgers? Bubblegum? Fucking racism? It's all these things are present in this fucking story.
This truly, like if you haven't, this story, this event in history is literally like, this is American history in a nutshell. Like, yes. This is a perfect like interpretation for everything that's bullshit that's happened in this country. This is the story of it.
Yes.
See it? The book is much easier to read than the audiobook.
Fuck. Anyways, I really wanted to touch on that. I'm glad I remembered before the end of the episode.
Yeah.
It's so upsetting to me. I read Chicano, and I'm like watching this while I'm reading it. It's like, why is this not fucking a movie, dude?
Yeah.
We got Guillermo del Toro slaving away over Nightmare Alley, which is a great movie too. But and they're great filmmakers, dude. It's just it makes sense to blend the two. Anyways, I'll fucking end there.
Michael Pena should direct it.
Yeah.
That would be tight.
And Diego Luna should be in it, dog.
Maybe.
If Diego Luna played Manuel Arechiga, dude.
That would be cool.
Anyways, we'll end there. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for liking and rating and reviewing and subscribing. You guys are amazing. And also, we just got 2,000 followers in the last 2 weeks on Instagram. Crazy. You know? Shout out to everyone that shares our content. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. It really helps out if you use the YouTube algorithm of sharing with people. It really helps push our content out to more people.
Start a group thread of people that you don't really care about that you can just fucking spam them with shares, because it does help us.
And also the people sharing our clips and whatnot on Reddit, you know, I appreciate when you guys give us credit. You know, please don't use our... People are not going to make it this far in the episode just to hear this, but... For those that are here, you know, spread the word. Like, just fucking credit people, dude. Like, we work hard on this thing, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, we appreciate everyone. But until next time, don't fly.
Fly.